Yo guys, what is going on? Blossoms back, and welcome back to another episode of Top Drives, and we are back. We are so back. Welcome back to Overrated or Overpowered. I started this trend back during APGP, I believe, and we brought it back for ENW, and we're bringing it back for American Overdrive. So let's get it. This is a series where I talk about what I think are some of the most performing, not the most performing, the most promising performers in the new update, and see if they're actually living up to the hype or if they are just fool's gold. So without further ado, y'all, I'm gonna turn on my camera and let's get into today's video. All right, now before we start with the Chevrolet Corvette Stingray, I do want to let you know that there's a brand new playlist on my channel which is dedicated to this series of overrated or rightly rated or blossom choice, basically. And we're gonna start off today with the Chevrolet Corvette Stingray C8, 194 for top speed. And I think that the number one thing that has gotten most players kind of like really shook up is the 0 to 60 of this car. For an RQ78, 3.0 of a 0 to 60 is incredible. I mean, there's so many legendaries, namely, you know, what do Sleepy call them? They call them the Jeromes, right? Those like RQ80s where they can't even hit like 3.0 for a 0 to 60. And for an Epic to hold that number is incredibly insane. This thing fully upgraded gets 2.598 when you max it out. It's crazy because back in the day when, you know, Top Drives was like 2 years old or 3 years old, some of the best Epics were always 3.398, and it slowly went to 3.298, then 3.198, and 3.098. Now we're seeing the sights of 2.598, and that isn't even an RQ79. Anyway, let's talk about the times, and as you can see, the Corvette Stingray is very impressive on the hairpin, karting circuit, twisty road, and canyon tour. Now, there are these little green blocks under the KTM Expo RR, and those green blocks basically signify that if I put in the KTM's time, then the KTM will be the best in all those races. So if you put the KTM's time in, and the Corvette Stingray is second best for karting circuit, twisty road, but it still remains the best for hairpin road and canyon tour. And it's been some pretty heavy hitters like the Celine S1, the Aston Martin Vantage, and of course the Porsche Butt 992. The Porsche Butt's still doing really well though in car park and G-force. Also, I kind of threw in the Dodge SRT Viper as well, just to showcase to you that, you know, RQ80s bring barely any value anymore. You know, the SRT Viper is not even, well, borderline competitive against RQ78s and 79s, which is crazy. It should never be that close if there's going to be a tier gap of 15 Ultrias and 15 Epics in between the Epic Chevrolets and KTMs, and of course the legendary Dodge SRT Viper. So it's about time for that Viper to move down. But the Stingray is very, very impressive. If I compared it against American cars only, the Corvette Stingray remains the best on the hairpin road, the karting circuit, twisty road, and it ties on the canyon tour. And then again, I'm putting in some other legendaries here, the Ford GT, another RQ80 Jerome, and it's also better on the twisty circuit. As you can see, the Dodge SRT Viper, which I have fully upgraded, is a very, very, very useless Epic. Some other cars to take note in this comparison would be the Beast Alpha being the best for the fast circuit, and the fast circuit rolling as well. And as you can see, another brand new car in this comparison, the Chevrolet Corvette Z06X, which isn't taking any main spots. But overall, the Chevrolet Corvette Stingray C8 is a phenomenal car. It is the best within the hairpin, the canyon tour, the karting circuit, and the twisty road within comparison, okay? Within my comparison. It remains the best hairpin for the general sense against like all Epics in the game. But also it is a ridiculously strong car on those track sets within American cars only. And I'm rating it Blossom Choice. Now, moving on to the second car that we want to talk about today is a Dodge Charger GT all-wheel drive. This has one of the nicest photos in the entire game and also in the entirety of American Overdrive, but how well does it perform? I'm putting it up against basically all your four-wheel drive medium ground clearance performance tire super rears, and as you can see, nothing too special. In terms of twisty track sets, it fails to win anywhere. You've got the Alpha 164, which is the best for the car park. The City Street small and medium goes to the Mitsubishi Lignum, and the Mitsubishi Galant VR4 takes most of the twisty track sets. When you shift the dynamic over onto drags, the Charger is a little bit better, being the best for the longer drags like the 1 mile and the 0 to 120, and that is usually attributed to its slightly better MRA. 63 makes it second best, only behind the Mitsubishi Langnam 65. One thing to note about the Charger GT all-wheel drive though is that it is one of three, literally three, four-wheel drive performance tire medium ground clearance American superiors. The only other cars that the Charger is competing against within that niche is the RQ48 Challenger GT all-wheel drive that used to be an ultra rare back in the day, and the Dodge Avenger RT all-wheel drive from the same update. So overall, I'm gonna rate the Charger slightly under average. As a four-wheel drive performance tire medium ground clearance super rare, it's not good. But because it has a stranglehold on that American niche, it will give you value somewhere down the line. So for that, I'll put it slightly under average. Now, moving on to the third car, the Dodge T-Rex 6x6. This car surprised me, and in a good way too. So let's compare it in the drag sense among sand, snow, ice, and dirt against, you know, more drag orientated off-road super rares. And as you can see, it's pretty strong. It's really dominant actually, being the best car on the 0 to 100 dirt, 0 to 100 zero dirt, 1 mile dirt, hill climb dirt, testable. I mean, you can see that it's beating its main competitor, which is the Lamborghini Lambo LMO02. It beats it everywhere besides the quarter mile in the snow. It also beats the RQ47 Ram 2500 and the RQ47 Mercedes-Benz G500 Cabriolet. The fact that the Dodge beats the Mercedes-Benz G500, I think, is pretty freaking impressive, to be honest. For an RQ42 car, 5 RQ cheaper, and it brings that much value on the drag. Among American cars, it is relatively strong. It will lose out to the RQ49 GMC Yukon XL Denali, but then again, there's 7 RQs splitting those two cars apart. For an RQ saver, the Dodge T-Rex 6x6 is a fantastic car to own. So I think it's the best in the dirt hill climb, the testable, and it's a great lower RQ dragster within that super rare rarity within the comparison. And I'm gonna rate it slightly under Blossom Choice. It might get to Blossom Choice if there are enough spots up for grabs, but the T-Rex 6x6 is a great low RQ dragster for its niche, a fantastic new addition to the game. Now moving on is the Cadillac El Dorado. I kind of got into a rabbit hole when I selected this car for the series, because I started watching the Hoovies Garage video of him, because he bought the Cadillac El Dorado, and yeah, it's really cool. This car has no door handles. 0. It's supposed to have some like magnetic push rod or something he called it. I can't really remember, but it doesn't work. And he bought this car for only $12,000, and it actually sold for at the Barrett Jackson auction for $60,000 back in 2009, I believe. But anyway, this car is pretty impressive because it's got a really high top speed, and the MRA is pretty decent. But how well does it fare against its peers? Well, as you can see, nothing. Nothing at all. The main thing about this car was going to be how well it would perform on the 1 mile and the test bowl, and unfortunately, it's only second best on the test bowl, 147 behind the Maserati Mistral's 154, and on the 1 mile, it's not even as good as the BMW 6 Series. So, unfortunately, in a general sense, the Cadillac El Dorado doesn't really win much. And within that American overdrive niche, it only shines on this 0 to 150, and that's because all the other cars DNF and on the 1 mile drag. It's not a good addition for American Uncommons in general, because it will be going up against the Boss 302 and the Mustang Mach 1. But, you know, against American overdrive, it's slightly better, you know, shining a light on the 1 mile and the 0 to 150 and the testable is, and the L-shaped drag and all that kind of stuff. But then again, it isn't that dominant even within that very tight niche, which is American overdrive. So overall, the Cadillac El Dorado, not the best in my opinion. It's an overdrive uncommon 1 mile car. and testable car, and that's about it. So it's a long drag within its own update, and maybe decent within the Cadillac Uncommon niche, and that's about it. So I'm gonna say it's slightly overrated. Moving on is the Chevrolet Forenza Can-Am. Now let's begin with cars within its niche. I'm comparing it against RQ45, 46, 44, medium ground clearance, mono drive, super rares. And as you can see, the Chevrolet Forenza, although it comes second place on many of the drags, it still falls behind the Ford SVT, which is going to be your A-team choice. Doesn't win anything, and it DNFs on the 0 to 150. One thing to take note though is that City Streets small and medium time, that Cadillac Ciel looks pretty good. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it looks pretty good, and I'll have that in another episode of this series. As always, guys, this has been stay and true for every single episode in this series. We're going to showcase 9 cars. Moving on to the twisty stuff, the Forenza shines in the indoor karting with 45 and below, but the moment you put in the RQ46 Mazda Cosmo, the Cosmo becomes the best car for indoor karting, karting circuit, and slalom. So within the comparison, yes, the Chevrolet is the best for indoor karting, but it isn't that impressive. So overall, it's best in mid-range indoor karting, and maybe not American, but yeah, American Overdrive, not OD, but AD drag. It's not the best. I thought that it would be a great City Streets car, City Streets small car in particular, because of its low 0 to 60, but the Cadillac is the better option. So I think it's more to the overrated side. Moving on now, the first legendary that we're going to review is the Chevrolet Corvette Z06 C8. It is the best mid-range. Oh wait, no, this is just a copy paste from the last car. I forgot to delete that, my bad. Okay, so let's talk about this RQ86 legendary. It is fantastic on the twisty circuit, twisty road, and karting circuit. But one thing to take note is that the moment you put in the Caterham 7 620R, then it only becomes the best car for the twisty circuit. But let's look at it. You take away the Caterham 620R for a second, and the Chevrolet Corvette Z06 actually outperforms a few RQ87s and some cars within its RQ neighborhood of RQ86. It's able to beat cars like the Pagani Zonda Barchetta, the Zenvo TS1 GT, and even the Alfa TZ3 Corsa, the Pagani Huayra on certain tracks set to karting the twisty and a twisty road. Now put that up against on the drag, and it doesn't really win anything at all because the MRA on the Corvette isn't that great, only 78.62. That being said though, it is a very, very impressive car on certain twisty track sets like the twisty circuit, road, and karting circuit. So I mean twisty circuit, twisty road, and karting circuit within the comparison and niche, and I'm gonna rate it slightly above average. In some situations it does hit higher, but then again, it's not a good dragster and it's not a good super twisty car. It's a decent hybrid. In fact, it's one of the best RQ86 hybrids, and it's able to beat some RQ87s. You just need to know where to put the Corvette Z06. I don't think it's fantastic, but it's definitely slightly above average in my opinion. Moving on now is the Chevrolet Corvette Stingray 3, and it's again, I forgot to delete that, so forget this part on the best in part. But let's look at this. So before I even put it in a general sense, I already saw that it was not going to be a good car. Against American cars within its own niche, like the Mercury Messenger, the Pontiac Solstice, it doesn't win anything, and it's really quite sad. But yeah, I mean, if you want to put it in a more open scenario with all the other cars in their times that aren't even American, I mean, surprise, surprise, the Corvette Stingray 3 doesn't win anything at all. When it comes to the drags, again, doesn't win much. I'm only comparing it against American cars. It loses to the Charger, the 1969 Charger on the quarter mile. The MRA on the car isn't the best thing in the world, 68. It will lose to the Chrysler 300M, which now seems to be a 332 kind of car with its handling nerf. And also it loses to the Charger in other scenarios as well. So long drags goes to the Chrysler, short drags goes to the Charger. The Chevrolet is not a good car on the drag scenario or the twisty scenario, so I'm gonna put it slightly overrated, because one thing that we need to talk about is that there are only 8 American overdrive performance tire super rares, and the Chevrolet Corvette Stingray 3 is the best among those 8. So within that American overdrive niche, it will be the best by default because it's the highest RQ1 and it brings the best quote-unquote performance. But the moment you take it out of the American overdrive niche, the Corvette Stingray 3 becomes an irrelevant car. So the only reason why I'm not putting the Corvette Stingray, by the way, holy shit, because they look exactly alike, all the way down at overrated, is because it's slightly boosted by the fact that it has no competition within the American overdrive pool of cars. Now moving on, the Cadillac era. My god, this one is incredible. It is a fantastic car on car park, G-force, and slalom, and it's also fantastic on the wet. It is able to beat any car within its niche, which is a low ground clearance four-wheel drive ultra rears, so much so that I'm actually putting it up against an RQ74 Audi TT, and it still beats it on the car park, on the G-force, and the slalom. On the wet scenario, it still remains an absolute king on those three track sets, beating out everything within its niche, as well as the Audi TTS. Shout out to the Skyline R33 being the best car for twisty circuit rolling, Monaco G-force, and Monaco hairpin, but it also remains the best because the Audi TT doesn't have times. And it's fair to say that if the Cadillac era is able to beat an RQ74 within its own niche, it will beat all the RQ, the Jerry's. It'll beat all the Jerry four-wheel drive low ground clearance cars as well. Like, I didn't even bother to compare those cars against the Cadillac era because I knew that they were going to lose. One thing that I feel like a lot of people will compare the Cadillac era to would be the Blossom Choice Caterhams, the Epic Caterhams. The Epic Caterhams do beat the Cadillac era on a slalom, but you basically need a juggernaut to take the Cadillac era off the podium for that slalom, wet, G-force, and car park area. So the Cadillac era is fantastic. As an ultra, this is the second coming of the Caterham because the Caterham used to be an ultra, right? I believe it's the Caterham 270. I always forget the model of that, but it is the best for super twisty wet. It's also the best for super twisty dry within its own niche. This car is definitely Blossom Choice. Now, the last car that we're going to review, 9 out of 9, is the Cadillac Escalade V. And this car kind of shook me a little bit. In a general sense, this is what I kind of judged the car. That's why I was like, oh, the Cadillac Escalade V isn't that great, like it loses to the RQ69 BMW iX and the RQ72 Mercedes-Benz G63, and the only place where it shines within this general comparison is within the 0 to 100 and the decibel, right? And when I say general comparison, I mean within its RQ neighborhood. I'm not even comparing it up against, higher RQ cars like the Spiker Peking to Paris, or now known as the Spiker D12, or even the BMW iX M60, right? So within that RQ, low 70, high 60 range, the Cadillac Escalade V isn't even that much of an outperformer in a general sense. But what kind of changed my mind on this car was within that American comparison, this thing is uncontested, beating cars like the RQ76 Dodge Durango SRT and also outgunning cars like the Lincoln Navicuous as well as the Ford F-150 Lightning. So that's pretty impressive. When it comes to the American all-surface tire niche, this becomes the best in class. But the moment you put in the off-road tire cars like the T-Rex, then this isn't the best car anymore. So in my opinion, I do believe that the Escalade V is above average. It is the best in class for its niche. It's an American all-surface drag king, and it kind of just stays within that little bubble. But it does its job very well within its own niche. So overall, I'll put it not at Blossom Choice, but I think it is a good car overall. That is going to be part 1. These are the first 9 cars that we're going to be showcasing in overrated or overpowered. I always forget. Overrated or Blossom Choice, overrated or overpowered, but those are the first 9 cars I'll be showcasing you here. If you want to see some other cars in the next couple of episodes, let me know now in the comments below. We have 4 episodes for APGP, 3 episodes for ENW. I'm gunning towards 4 episodes for AD as well, American Overdrive. I mean AO. I just don't like calling American Overdrive AO because whenever I think of AO, I think of the Australian Open because I watch tennis. So it's a little bit. I see AO when I think of tennis. I don't think of the update. You know what I mean? So American Overdrive. Anyway, hope you guys have a great day. I'm gonna stay safe, wash your hands, and blossom out. Peace.
Bro, this song just makes me so happy.
Me too.
Imagine being Asian in the 50s, looking nifty, leather jacket looking sleek, look like Presley, look so deadly. Got a jukebox back at home, feeling jazzy. Turn it on and play it slow, like the movies with the ladies. They so fine. Imagine being Asian in the 50s, looking nifty. Leather jacket, looking sleek. Look like Presley, look so deadly. Got a jukebox back at home, feeling jazzy. Turn it on and play it slow, like the movies with the ladies. They so fine. Sit back, relax in my Bonneville Pontiac. Hold tight all night, cruise to Jacksonville Atlantic. Blonde hair